One of the most important principles you can ever learn is that every action produces a consequence. Life is built on this law. Whether in relationships, business, leadership, or personal growth, the choices we make today eventually shape the reality we experience tomorrow. Many people become frustrated when they see individuals who manipulate, deceive, exploit, or hurt others seemingly prosper without consequence. They wonder how someone can leave a trail of damaged relationships behind them and continue moving forward as if nothing happened. But life has a way of balancing accounts that no human being can permanently avoid. Consequences do not always arrive immediately. This is where many people become confused. They assume that because a person appears successful in the moment, they have escaped accountability. But time reveals what appearances conceal. A farmer does not plant a seed in the morning and expect a harvest in the evening. There is always a period between planting and reaping. In the same way, every choice enters a process. The results may not be visible right away, but they are developing beneath the surface. This is especially true for people who consistently manipulate others. Manipulation may create short-term advantages. It may help someone gain attention, maintain control, or avoid responsibility for a period of time. But every manipulative act weakens trust. Every lie damages credibility. Every betrayal creates distance. While these effects may not be obvious immediately, they accumulate over time. Eventually, the person discovers that what once seemed like a successful strategy has become the source of their greatest problems. Trust is one of the most valuable assets a person can possess. It takes years to build and only moments to destroy. When people repeatedly experience dishonesty, exploitation, or manipulation, they begin to withdraw. They may not announce their departure immediately. They may not confront the behavior directly. But internally something changes. Respect begins to disappear. Confidence begins to fade. The relationship starts to weaken. This process may happen slowly, but it is incredibly powerful. Many narcissistic individuals focus heavily on winning individual battles. They want to win arguments, control narratives, and maintain dominance in relationships. But they often fail to understand that life is not determined by individual battles. Life is determined by long-term patterns. Winning an argument means very little if you lose trust. Controlling someone temporarily means very little if you destroy the relationship permanently. Manipulation may achieve a short-term objective, but it often creates long-term consequences that are far more costly. The reality is that character always leaves fingerprints. People may be fooled temporarily, but patterns eventually become visible. Someone may convince one person, then another person, and then another person. But eventually, enough evidence accumulates that people begin to see the truth. The same behaviors that once helped them gain influence begin causing them to lose it. The same tactics that once produced results begin pushing people away. This is because character cannot remain hidden forever. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing they can separate actions from consequences. They assume they can consistently make destructive choices while somehow avoiding destructive outcomes. But life does not work that way. Actions and consequences are connected. You may delay the consequence. You may disguise the consequence. You may deny the consequence. But you cannot permanently escape it. Think about a building with a damaged foundation. From the outside, everything may appear normal. The walls may look strong. The structure may seem stable. People passing by may admire it. But if the foundation is compromised, the problem is already there. Time simply reveals what was hidden. Eventually, cracks begin to appear. The structure becomes unstable. The weakness that was ignored can no longer remain concealed. The same principle applies to human behavior. A person may project confidence, success, and control. They may appear untouchable. But if their relationships are built on manipulation instead of trust, if their influence is built on fear instead of respect, and if their success is built on deception instead of integrity, the foundation is already compromised. The consequences may not be immediate, but they are inevitable. What makes this principle so powerful is that it applies equally to everyone. No one is exempt. Position does not exempt you. Wealth does not exempt you. Popularity does not exempt you. Intelligence does not exempt you. The laws of cause and effect operate regardless of status. Every person eventually experiences the results of the seeds they plant. This truth should not inspire bitterness or a desire for revenge. Instead, it should inspire wisdom. The goal is not to sit and wait for someone else's consequences. The goal is to understand the importance of your own choices. When you recognize that every action creates a consequence, you become more intentional about how you treat people. You become more careful with your words. You become more committed to honesty, integrity, and personal growth. The most successful people understand that character is an investment. Every act of integrity strengthens future opportunities. Every honest decision builds credibility. Every healthy relationship creates a foundation for future success. While manipulation seeks quick rewards, character focuses on lasting results. Life always rewards what is sustainable. Deception is not sustainable. Manipulation is not sustainable. Control is not sustainable. But honesty, trust, respect, and integrity create foundations that can withstand time. That is why consequences are not merely punishments for poor choices. They are reminders that life ultimately reflects the principles upon which it is built. In the end, every person lives in the harvest of their own decisions. Some harvest peace because they planted wisdom. Some harvest trust because they planted integrity. Others face storms because they planted manipulation and deception. The lesson is simple but profound. Every action matters. Every choice matters. And sooner or later, life returns to each person the results of what they have consistently sown. One of the greatest misconceptions in life is the belief that control is the same thing as power. Many people spend years trying to control situations, relationships, and even the people around them because they believe control guarantees success. But true success has never been built on control. It has always been built on character. Control may produce temporary results, but character produces lasting influence. Control can force people to comply, but character inspires people to trust. This is a lesson that many narcissists struggle to understand. A narcissist often believes that if they can dominate conversations, manipulate emotions, and influence people's decisions, they are winning. They may become skilled at saying the right things, creating the right image, and maintaining a position of influence over others. For a while, this can appear effective. People may follow them, support them, or even admire them. But there is a problem with a foundation built on control. It is unstable. The moment people begin to see the truth, the entire structure starts to weaken. Character operates differently. Character does not need manipulation to maintain influence. Character does not require deception to earn respect. Character creates trust naturally because it is rooted in consistency, honesty, and integrity. When people trust your character, they feel safe around you. They believe your words because your actions support them. They respect your leadership because it comes from authenticity rather than intimidation. Think about the strongest relationships in your life. Whether they are friendships, family connections, business partnerships, or marriages, they are not built on control. They are built on trust. The reason those relationships survive difficult seasons is because trust creates stability. When trust is present, people are willing to work through challenges together. But when manipulation becomes the foundation, even the strongest-looking relationships eventually begin to crack. This is one of the reasons narcissists often struggle with long-term fulfillment. They may succeed in gaining attention, admiration, or temporary loyalty, but these things are not the same as genuine respect. Attention can disappear. Admiration can fade. Loyalty built on fear can vanish overnight. But respect earned through character tends to grow stronger with time. The challenge for a narcissist is that maintaining control requires constant effort. They must continually manage perceptions, manipulate narratives, and influence people's emotions. It becomes an exhausting cycle. Every relationship becomes a project to manage rather than a connection to enjoy. Every disagreement becomes a threat rather than an opportunity for growth. Every criticism feels like an attack because their identity depends heavily on maintaining a certain image. Character, on the other hand, creates freedom. When your life is built on integrity, you do not have to remember which version of the story you told. You do not have to constantly worry about being exposed. You do not have to spend your energy controlling how others think about you. Your focus can remain on growth, purpose, and contribution because your foundation is secure. One of the most powerful truths in life is that people eventually reveal who they truly are. Time has a way of exposing character. A person can wear a mask for a season, but maintaining a false identity becomes increasingly difficult over the years. Eventually, patterns emerge. Behaviors repeat. The truth becomes visible. This is why character is so important. Character is what remains when the performance ends. Many narcissists focus heavily on external appearances. They want to look successful, respected, admired, and influential. But appearance and reality are not always the same thing. A person can appear powerful while being deeply insecure. A person can appear confident while constantly seeking validation. A person can appear successful while struggling internally. Character is what bridges the gap between appearance and reality. It ensures that what people see on the outside matches what exists on the inside. The most respected leaders in history were not respected because they controlled people. They were respected because people trusted them. Trust is earned through consistent actions over time. It cannot be demanded. It cannot be manipulated. It cannot be forced. It must be built. And once trust is broken repeatedly, rebuilding it becomes extremely difficult. This is why character always outlasts control. Control depends on circumstances. Character remains regardless of circumstances. Control depends on other people cooperating. Character depends on personal values. Control often creates resistance. Character creates influence. One is temporary. The other is enduring. For those who have been affected by narcissistic behavior, this lesson carries an important message. Do not measure success by how much control someone appears to have today. Measure success by the quality of their character and the trust they build over time. A person who relies on manipulation may seem powerful for a season, but genuine influence belongs to those who live with integrity. In the end, life has a remarkable way of rewarding character. People are drawn to authenticity. Healthy relationships are built on honesty. Lasting respect grows from integrity. While control may create temporary victories, character creates a legacy. And when the storms of life arrive, as they always do, it is character, not control, that determines whether a person stands strong or falls apart. That is why character will always be more valuable than power, more enduring than influence, and more important than any image a person tries to create. One of the greatest human needs is connection. Every person wants to be understood, valued, respected, and appreciated. Genuine relationships provide emotional support, encouragement, accountability, and a sense of belonging. They become the foundation upon which people build meaningful lives. However, relationships cannot survive without trust. Trust is the invisible bond that holds people together, and once that trust is repeatedly broken, even the strongest connections begin to weaken. For many narcissists, relationships are often viewed differently. Instead of seeing relationships as partnerships built on mutual respect, they may view them as opportunities for validation, control, admiration, or personal gain. At first, this approach may appear successful. They may attract people through charm, confidence, charisma, or promises. They may know exactly what to say to make others feel special and appreciated. In the beginning, everything can seem perfect. But relationships built on image rather than authenticity face a serious problem. Eventually, people begin to see patterns. They begin to notice inconsistencies between words and actions. They begin to recognize manipulation, selfishness, dishonesty, or a lack of empathy. What once seemed impressive starts to feel exhausting. What once appeared charming begins to reveal deeper issues. This process rarely happens overnight. Most people do not immediately walk away from someone they care about. They often give second chances, third chances, and sometimes countless opportunities for change. They hope things will improve. They believe the person will eventually recognize the damage being caused. They invest time, patience, and emotional energy trying to preserve the relationship. However, every relationship has limits. Every person's trust account has a balance. Each lie, betrayal, broken promise, manipulation tactic, or act of disrespect makes a withdrawal from that account. If enough withdrawals occur without genuine change, eventually the account becomes empty. At that point, something significant happens. People stop believing the words. They stop trusting the promises. They stop investing emotionally. And in many cases, they begin creating distance. This is one of the storms that often follows a narcissist through life. As relationships repeatedly deteriorate, a pattern of isolation begins to emerge. Family members become cautious. Friends become distant. Partners become exhausted. Colleagues become skeptical. The circle of trusted relationships gradually becomes smaller and smaller. What makes this particularly difficult is that narcissists often struggle to understand why it is happening. Rather than examining their own behavior, they may blame everyone else. They may convince themselves that they are surrounded by ungrateful people, disloyal friends, difficult partners, or jealous individuals. They may see themselves as victims of everyone else's failures, rather than participants in the problems they helped create. This mindset prevents growth because growth requires self-awareness. Without self-awareness, the same mistakes are repeated again and again. New relationships are formed, but the same behaviors eventually produce the same outcomes. Different faces appear, but the same conflicts return. The names change, but the pattern remains unchanged. The tragedy is that genuine relationships are one of life's greatest treasures. A loyal friend, a loving family member, a supportive spouse, or a trustworthy mentor provides something that money, status, and success can never fully replace. Authentic relationships create stability during difficult times and joy during successful seasons. They remind us that we are not alone, but authentic relationships require vulnerability. They require honesty. They require accountability. They require the willingness to admit mistakes and grow from them. These qualities strengthen connections because they create trust. When manipulation replaces honesty, trust begins to disappear. When control replaces respect, connection begins to weaken. When pride replaces accountability, growth becomes impossible. Over time, people naturally move toward environments where they feel valued and away from environments where they feel used. This is a principle that affects every relationship. Healthy individuals seek relationships that encourage mutual respect, emotional safety, and genuine care. When those qualities are missing, distance often becomes necessary. As isolation increases, another challenge emerges. The attention and admiration that once seemed so important can no longer compensate for the absence of meaningful connection. A person may have many acquaintances, but very few trusted relationships. They may be surrounded by people yet still feel alone. They may receive attention but lack genuine support. This is because attention and connection are not the same thing. Attention can be given temporarily. Connection is earned over time. Attention may come from image. Connection comes from character. Attention may attract people initially. Character determines who stays. Many people spend years chasing admiration while neglecting the qualities that build lasting relationships. They focus on appearances instead of authenticity, influence instead of integrity, and control instead of trust. Yet eventually life reveals a simple truth. The quality of your relationships often reflects the quality of your character. This is why meaningful growth always begins within. The solution to loneliness is not more attention. The solution is becoming the kind of person capable of building healthy, trustworthy relationships. Real connection grows where honesty, empathy, humility, and accountability are present. For those who have been hurt by narcissistic individuals, there is an important lesson here as well. Do not measure your worth by how someone treated you. Their inability to value you properly is not a reflection of your value. Healthy relationships exist and healthy people exist. Continue investing in your own growth, healing, and character. Build relationships based on trust, respect, and mutual support. Because in the end, genuine relationships remain one of life's greatest blessings. They provide strength when challenges arise, encouragement when obstacles appear, and joy that cannot be manufactured through image or control. And while manipulation may create temporary influence, only character creates lasting connection. One of the most exhausting things a person can do is spend their entire life trying to be someone they are not. Yet this is often the hidden struggle behind narcissistic behavior. Many narcissists become experts at creating an image. They carefully construct a version of themselves that appears confident, successful, powerful, admired, and superior. They want others to see strength, but they work tirelessly to hide weakness. They want admiration, but they fear exposure. They want control, but they are often fighting battles within themselves that few people ever see. The problem with living behind a false identity is that maintaining it requires constant effort. Every conversation becomes a performance. Every relationship becomes a stage. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to protect the image they have created. Instead of being authentic, they become focused on appearing perfect. Instead of building genuine connections, they become focused on managing perceptions. At first, this may seem effective. People may be impressed. They may believe the image being presented. The narcissist may receive attention, recognition, and validation. But there is a problem with every false identity. It is built on a foundation that cannot support long-term stability. Eventually, reality begins to challenge the illusion. No one can maintain perfection forever. No one can control every opinion. No one can hide every flaw indefinitely. Life has a way of revealing what is real. Circumstances change. Relationships evolve. People become more observant. Over time, the carefully constructed image begins to develop cracks. When those cracks appear, internal conflict often follows. You see, a healthy person finds security in who they truly are. Their confidence comes from self-awareness. They understand both their strengths and their weaknesses. They are comfortable admitting mistakes because their identity is not dependent on appearing flawless. But a narcissist often ties their entire sense of worth to the image they project. If people admire them, they feel valuable. If people praise them, they feel important. If people question them, criticize them, or see through the mask, their sense of stability becomes threatened. This creates a dangerous cycle. The more fragile the image becomes, the harder they fight to protect it. The harder they fight to protect it, the more disconnected they become from reality. The more disconnected they become from reality, the greater their internal frustration grows. This frustration often appears in ways that others may not immediately recognize. Some become increasingly defensive. Others become angry when challenged. Some blame everyone around them for problems they refuse to acknowledge. Others become obsessed with controlling how people perceive them. The reason is simple. When your identity is built on illusion, truth becomes a threat. Every criticism feels like an attack. Every disagreement feels like rejection. Every exposure feels like destruction. What should be a normal part of human growth becomes a source of emotional crisis. Imagine carrying that burden every day. Imagine constantly worrying about what others think. Imagine feeling the need to prove yourself in every situation. Imagine fearing that someone might discover the insecurities you have worked so hard to hide. That is not freedom. That is imprisonment. The very image designed to protect them becomes the thing that traps them. Because authenticity brings peace, but performance creates pressure. A person who is authentic can relax. They can admit mistakes. They can learn. They can grow. They do not need to pretend they know everything. They do not need to dominate every conversation. They do not need to be admired by everyone they meet. But when someone's identity depends entirely on admiration, every interaction becomes stressful. Every relationship becomes a source of risk. Every challenge becomes a threat to their carefully constructed image. Eventually, life creates situations that make the mask harder to maintain. Relationships fail. Trust is lost. People begin recognizing patterns of manipulation. Former admirers become critics. The attention that once reinforced the false identity starts to fade. This is where internal conflict intensifies. The narcissist is faced with two choices. The first choice is growth. This requires humility. It requires self-reflection. It requires accepting responsibility and confronting painful truths. It means acknowledging flaws and doing the difficult work of personal development. The second choice is deeper denial. This involves creating more excuses, blaming more people, and building even stronger walls around the false identity. Unfortunately, many choose the second path because it feels easier in the moment. But avoidance never solves problems. It only postpones them. The truth remains patient. It waits, and eventually it demands to be faced. One of the most important lessons in life is that true confidence does not come from convincing others that you are perfect. True confidence comes from knowing who you are, accepting your imperfections, and continuing to grow anyway. Real strength is not found in protecting an image. Real strength is found in facing reality. Real power is not found in controlling people. Real power is found in controlling yourself. Real peace is not found in being admired by everyone. Real peace is found in being comfortable with who you truly are. When a false identity begins to collapse, it often creates confusion, frustration, and emotional instability because the person has spent so much time investing in the image that they no longer know who they are without it. And that is the storm. Not the loss of attention, not the loss of control, not the loss of influence. The real storm is being forced to confront the difference between the person you pretend to be and the person you actually are. Because until that gap is closed through honesty, humility, and growth, no amount of praise, attention, or admiration will ever bring lasting peace. One of the most powerful truths about life is that unresolved issues never disappear simply because they are ignored. Many people believe that if they avoid a problem long enough, it will somehow fade away on its own. But life does not work that way. What is buried remains alive beneath the surface. It continues to grow, influence decisions, shape behavior, and affect relationships until it is finally confronted. This principle applies to everyone, but it is especially important when understanding the struggles that often develop in the life of a narcissist. Many narcissists spend years avoiding self-examination. They become experts at shifting blame onto others. If a relationship fails, someone else is at fault. If conflict arises, someone else is the problem. If opportunities are lost, circumstances are blamed. This pattern creates the illusion that they are never responsible for the difficulties they experience. At first, this strategy may seem effective because it protects them from uncomfortable truths. However, avoiding responsibility comes at a cost. Growth is impossible without self-awareness. A person cannot improve what they refuse to acknowledge. If someone spends years convincing themselves that every problem originates outside of them, they lose the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. They become trapped in repeating the same patterns over and over again. Different faces appear. Different relationships begin. Different environments emerge. Yet somehow the same conflicts continue to follow them. The reason is simple. The external circumstances may change, but the unresolved issues remain. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack every day without realizing it. At first, the weight may seem manageable. You adapt to it. You learn how to function despite it. But over time, the burden becomes heavier. It affects your posture. It drains your energy. It limits how far you can travel. Eventually, what was once manageable becomes overwhelming. Unresolved emotional issues operate in much the same way. Every hurt that is ignored, every insecurity that is denied, every weakness that is hidden adds another weight to the load. Over time, the burden grows. It begins affecting relationships, decision-making, emotional stability, and overall well-being. The person may not understand why they feel increasingly frustrated or dissatisfied, but the root cause remains the same. What has not been healed continues to influence their life. One of the greatest challenges for narcissists is that they often build their identity around protecting an image rather than pursuing growth. They may become so focused on appearing strong, successful, superior, or flawless that admitting weakness feels impossible. Yet true strength is not found in pretending to have no flaws. True strength is found in having the courage to confront them. The human spirit was never designed to thrive in denial. Denial may provide temporary comfort, but it prevents transformation. It acts like a wall between a person and the healing they desperately need. The longer that wall remains standing, the more difficult it becomes to address the issues hidden behind it. This is why unresolved problems tend to surface in unexpected ways. Sometimes they appear through anger that seems disproportionate to the situation. Sometimes they appear through chronic dissatisfaction, where nothing ever feels good enough. Sometimes they appear through repeated relationship failures. Sometimes they appear through anxiety, loneliness, or emotional instability. The symptoms may vary, but the source remains the same. The issues that were ignored are demanding attention. Life has a remarkable way of bringing hidden problems into the light. It does not do this to punish people. It does it because growth requires awareness. Before healing can occur, truth must be acknowledged. Before change can happen, responsibility must be accepted. Many people spend years trying to escape this process. They seek distractions. They seek validation. They seek control. They seek attention. Yet none of these things address the root issue. External solutions cannot solve internal problems. A person may gain admiration from thousands of people and still feel empty inside. A person may achieve success and still struggle with insecurity. A person may control others and still feel powerless within. Why? Because unresolved issues cannot be replaced with achievements, possessions, attention, or influence. They must be confronted directly. The tragedy is that many people recognize this truth only after years of repeating the same painful cycles. They finally realize that the common factor in every failed relationship, every recurring conflict, and every persistent frustration is not everyone else. It is the issues they refuse to address. This is one of life's greatest lessons. Healing begins where honesty begins. The moment a person stops blaming everyone else and starts examining themselves, transformation becomes possible. The moment they stop running from truth and begin embracing it, growth begins. The moment they accept responsibility for their choices, they reclaim the power to change their future. Unfortunately, many narcissists resist this process because self-reflection threatens the image they have worked so hard to maintain. Yet avoiding truth only strengthens the storm. Every year spent denying reality adds more pressure beneath the surface. Eventually, that pressure becomes impossible to contain. What is hidden seeks to be revealed. What is ignored seeks to be addressed. What is unresolved seeks resolution. This is not merely a psychological principle, it is a principle of life itself. And that is why genuine healing requires courage. It requires the willingness to face uncomfortable truths, accept responsibility, and pursue growth instead of perfection. The person who embraces this process becomes stronger, wiser, and healthier. The person who avoids it remains trapped in cycles that repeat year after year. The greatest freedom does not come from controlling others. It comes from understanding yourself. It comes from confronting your weaknesses, learning from your mistakes, and becoming a better person than you were yesterday. That is the path to lasting peace, meaningful relationships, and true fulfillment. Everything else is merely a temporary escape from a truth that will eventually demand attention. One of the most important lessons a person can learn after dealing with a narcissist is that their healing cannot depend on the narcissist's outcome. This truth is difficult for many people to accept because pain naturally seeks resolution. When someone has manipulated you, lied to you, betrayed your trust, or caused emotional damage, part of you wants to see justice. Part of you wants acknowledgement. Part of you wants them to realize what they did and understand the consequences of their actions. These feelings are understandable, but if you are not careful, they can keep you emotionally connected to the very person you are trying to move beyond. Many people unknowingly remain trapped long after the relationship has ended. The narcissist may no longer be physically present, but they continue occupying space in the person's thoughts. Every day becomes a search for answers. Every conversation becomes an attempt to understand why things happened. Every piece of news about the narcissist becomes emotionally significant. In this condition, the narcissist still has influence because your focus remains attached to them. Freedom begins when your focus changes direction. The moment you stop asking what will happen to them and start asking what can I become, everything starts to change. This shift is powerful because it places your energy where it belongs. You cannot control another person's decisions. You cannot force self-awareness upon someone who refuses to examine themselves. You cannot make someone grow if they are committed to staying the same. But you can control your own growth. You can take responsibility for your own healing. You can decide what kind of future you want to create. One of the greatest mistakes people make after narcissistic relationships is allowing the narcissist to define the next chapter of their lives. They spend years trying to prove they were right. They spend years hoping for an apology. They spend years imagining a moment when the narcissist finally understands the damage they caused. But healing does not arrive when another person changes. Healing arrives when you change. Think about how much energy is consumed by resentment. Think about how much mental space is occupied by anger, disappointment, and the desire for validation. Every hour spent obsessing over someone else's choices is an hour that cannot be invested in your own future. Every day spent waiting for justice is a day not spent building the life you deserve. This does not mean ignoring what happened. It does not mean pretending the pain was not real. It means refusing to allow your past to become your permanent address. Pain is an experience, not a destination. It is something you move through, not something you live inside forever. When you begin focusing on your own growth, something remarkable happens. Your confidence starts returning. The energy once spent analyzing the narcissist becomes available for personal development. You start pursuing goals again. You begin reconnecting with passions that were neglected. You discover strengths you never knew you had. Slowly, your identity separates itself from the relationship and reconnects with who you truly are. Many people underestimate the power of personal growth after emotional hardship. Difficult experiences often reveal strengths that comfort never could. You learn resilience. You learn wisdom. You learn discernment. You become more aware of your boundaries. You become more selective about who receives access to your life. The very experience that tried to break you becomes the experience that teaches you how strong you really are. There is also great freedom in realizing that your happiness is not dependent upon another person's behavior. Too many people unknowingly hand over control of their emotional well-being by waiting for someone else to provide closure. But closure is not always something another person gives you. Sometimes closure is a decision. It is the decision to accept reality, learn the lesson, and continue moving forward. The truth is that some people may never apologize. Some people may never acknowledge the harm they caused. Some people may continue blaming others for their problems indefinitely. If your healing depends on their awareness, then your future remains in their hands. But when your healing depends on your own commitment to growth, no one can stop your progress. This is why purpose becomes so important. Purpose redirects your attention from what happened to what is possible. It shifts your perspective from loss to opportunity. Instead of being consumed by the past, you become excited about the future. You stop asking why the experience happened and start asking what you can learn from it. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as the author of your next chapter. The most successful people are not those who never faced pain. They are often the people who refuse to let pain define them. They took difficult experiences and transformed them into wisdom. They took heartbreak and transformed it into strength. They took disappointment and transformed it into determination. Your future is too valuable to be tied to someone else's downfall. Your destiny is too important to be delayed while waiting for someone else to change. The greatest victory is not watching a narcissist face consequences. The greatest victory is becoming so healthy, so confident, so fulfilled, and so focused on your purpose that their actions no longer determine the quality of your life. When you reach that point, you discover a level of freedom that many people never experience. You are no longer controlled by anger. You are no longer trapped by bitterness. You are no longer waiting for validation. You are simply moving forward with clarity, wisdom, and purpose. And that is where true healing begins. It begins the moment you stop building your future around their story and start building it around your own.